everyone. Welcome and thank you so much for joining this WayUp Summer Series event. I am beyond excited, but also honored to be speaking with Carla today. And with that, we can turn off the slides and welcome Carla. Thank you so much for doing this, Carla.
Thanks, Liz. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So I want to just dive right in. I think a lot of people who are on this call are future CMOs themselves or would love to be a CMO themselves. But for people like me who've never been a CMO, what does a CMO do every day? I'd love to hear a little bit about an average day in your life.
Sure. Well, no 2 days are the same, which is actually part of why I absolutely love my job. So on any given day, I could be interacting with members of my team, with an outside agency, with analysts, with my boss and peers. So really no 2 days look the same. And I think that's part of why I enjoy my work so much. Now, this day and age, a lot of it is from the comfort of my bedroom. So I will say that days look more monotonous during COVID, but that's starting to get better.
Are you planning to go back to the office once COVID is over?
We are. I have started to travel to headquarters. So I've been a couple times. I go once a month, and then we will be opening our offices formally after Labor Day in September.
Amazing. I hear great things about the IBM office. So that's really very cool. All right, so let's rewind back a bit. We have a lot of people on who are in college or maybe just recently graduated. Tell us about Carla in college. What were you like? What did you study? What were you known for? Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I put myself through school running restaurants and bars. I was going to architecture school while I was simultaneously running restaurants and bars. And so at the same time that I was learning design thinking, I was learning all about P&L management and people leadership and turning businesses around. And, you know, Liz, that really shaped who I am as a person and as an executive. It gave me a lot of grit. So working a couple jobs and going to architecture school was not easy. My college experience was not your typical college experience, but it really did shape who I am.
And I mean, just as a side note, I feel like architecture school in and of itself, just being a full-time student in architecture schools, isn't that one of the hardest majors to graduate with? I think I've read that a few times.
Yeah, it is. I wasn't getting a whole lot of sleep. They have these things called on-surettes, which are all-nighter challenges that the professors will come on a Friday night and give you a challenge that you have to solve that by that next Monday. And you basically stay up for 48 hours trying to figure it out. And tears were shed in many of those on-surettes. But that also, I think, really shaped me because it taught me to be really agile and to be a problem solver and to be creative and to collaborate with teams.
Wow. Well, spoiler alert, you didn't become an architect. And so I can imagine that it must have been pretty crazy to finish going through that entire degree, putting in all of that work. And then, you are where you are today, which is the top of your field that millions or billions of people would love to be in your role, but it's not an architect. So tell us about your transition from college to your first job.
Yeah, well, I will say I'm a wannabe architect. I'm living in a teardown right now. So if you can see, my balcony is about to fall off my house. So I'm, this is what I do in my spare time. I still work on architecture and fix up houses. I still love it very much. But then in terms of, how I got my start, I was actually in the bar business, and I was working one night at the bar, and the equivalent to the chief revenue officer at Dell, Ro Parra, who was running sales and marketing at Dell at the time, overheard me speaking Spanish to a customer. And he said, "Wait a minute, you speak Spanish?" And I said, "Yeah, it's my first language." And he said, "Send me your resume. I'm starting a Latin American division." And that is literally, Liz, how my career started. I was plucked out of the bars to start at Dell. I interviewed at Dell and was actually rejected for not having enough sales experience. And so I interviewed.
Oh my God.
So I interviewed a second time and I was accepted. And I had an awesome 16-year run at Dell. And that was my education. I grew up in the sales organization there, was eventually recruited into marketing by our CMO. And it was an awesome run, both personally and professionally.
And before we keep going through your career, because it's an unbelievable one, what advice do you have for people who are watching this, who are maybe studying something they're also passionate about, but not necessarily something they want to do for a living, and thinking about 4 years of potentially, it's not sunk cost, as you and I both know, but sometimes parents might make you think it is. So what advice do you have for them?
Yeah, this may be a controversial point of view. I have a child that's looking at colleges now, and I've realized that I don't have a very popular point of view, but I think you should study what you love. And really pursue what's interesting to you. And this is the time in your life where you should be exploring as much as possible. And everything contributes to the fabric of who you are as a person. And I also think most people don't end up doing, and I could be wrong, most people don't end up doing what they studied in undergrad, but it does shape them. So I wouldn't be overly concerned if you're in a major that doesn't necessarily translate into something that you can see yourself doing for a living, but it does make you who you are. So I would encourage exploration. I think that's why internships are so cool, because they enable that sort of exploration. But you are not limited by your major at all. I'm proof of that.
Amazing. And for what it's worth, I studied math and poli-sci, and I am certainly not a mathematician or a politician. So although sometimes you feel like you're doing politics, but I'm not a politician. So I certainly echo what you said. Yeah. Okay. So you told us how you got your start at Dell and in sales, but sales is not marketing. Obviously, there's a lot of relevancies. So walk us through how you went from sales to marketing, especially because sales is a very common entry-level job that maybe some people don't know if they want to be in sales forever. And you've very successfully grown the ranks and switched to another field. So tell us about it.
Yeah, I'm not your conventional CMO, so I didn't necessarily grow up within marketing. However, my experience in sales, and at Dell, I had the awesome opportunity of working in every single sales job that there was. So from field sales to frontline sales to inside sales to overlay to technical, to emerging markets in Latin America, to global roles. And so that really gave me a really unique vantage point when I was recruited to marketing. And when I was recruited to marketing by the then CMO of Dell, I really realized fairly quickly that I had so much to learn from my peers, and each one of them had an area of expertise. But at the same time, I had so much to offer them with my background in sales. So each one of my peers became a phone a friend. So when I needed an expert in digital sales, I knew who to call. When I needed an expert in brand, I knew who to call. And then when they needed help understanding how to motivate sales, I was the one that they called. So I think the other thing that I would call out to everyone on the call today is just be aware of who your cohort is, who your network is that you're developing, because these are the people that will carry you through your career, and you will need each other over time.
Yeah, one of our speakers in the past had talked about peer mentors. It sounds like you've had that in your life, where it's not just people who are necessarily much older and more experienced, but also your peers.
Yeah, I have a lot of functional peer mentors. And whether that's because I need functional expertise on a certain topic, or whether I need advice because somebody's walked a mile in my shoes, I see real value in that. And I would also say that in my work, I have a philosophy. It's not my own philosophy. It's called first team methodology, where I believe that when you're operating at your best is when you're operating in service of your peers. And that level of collaboration is a game changer. So I think recognizing that both in your work, once you're out officially and formally in the workplace or as an intern, but also in your broader network, working in service of your peers is something that's really powerful.
Awesome. Now, I don't mean to be too prescriptive, because I know there's a million paths to CMO, but for those watching right now who are dreaming of one day being the CMO, let alone CMO of one of the largest and most impactful companies in the world, like IBM, any advice you have of things that you've seen a lot of your peer CMOs or yourself do early days that set you up for success to be in this role?
Yeah, I would say there are different kinds of CMOs. So understand what kind of CMO that you want to be. So there are commercial CMOs that are focused on growth of a business. There are brand focused CMOs that are focused on messaging. There are different types of CMOs. In fact, HBR wrote an awesome article called "What's the Matter with CMOs?" That describes the different CMO profiles and their product CMOs. So I think having an understanding of where your functional area of expertise is going to be important, because it's also important to know what kind of CMO a company needs at a certain moment in time. That being said, I think the most powerful thing that CMOs could realize in the future is understanding that the impact that they can have on the business and the strategy, recognizing that they are the ears and eyes to the marketplace and to the customer. and that the CMO really can make a significant impact beyond just marketing in their role, and a recognition of that.
Awesome. What kind of CMO are you, by the way?
I'm kind of a mixture, but I would say I definitely lean more towards commercial.
Okay, that makes sense with your sales background.
Yeah, so I'm definitely at IBM to help grow the business, but I also recognize that there's a huge opportunity for us to clarify our messaging and our identity in the marketplace. So to really tell people who we are and what we stand for and what we do, and that is going to be our path to growth. So that's why I say I'm a little bit of a mixture in this role.
Fantastic. And before we keep going, just a quick plug to everyone. If you hear about these roles and you're like, I want to do that at IBM, IBM is hiring very actively. We even have Todd Good on the call, who runs the early career program. So if anyone is interested, we'll go ahead and have Brandon on our events team send out the links for the WayUp IBM profile, so you all can check it out, because they are hiring very aggressively. Very fast growing company. It's pretty incredible. Okay, so back to you. So it's not every day that I get to interview a CMO of a Fortune 500 company who's Hispanic. And I know you've done a lot of leadership in that world, and in the world of just trying to get more inclusion and diversity at the companies you've been at. So is there anything in particular that you think helped you most getting to where you are? We'll start there.
Sure. I think it took me a while to recognize that what made me different was what made me special and was my advantage. And I'm operating at a level of authenticity that I've never reached before at IBM. And I think part of that is the fact that IBM is so committed to diversity and inclusion, and my peers have been so amazing in wrapping their arms around me and welcoming me. I mean, it's really caught me off guard how amazing they've all been. But I just want to stress, when you are operating at your full and authentic self and really embracing who you are, that's when you do your best work. And that can be really difficult to do in different environments, and it takes a lot of courage. And if you find yourself in an environment where you can't be your authentic self, then that's not the environment for you.
That makes perfect sense. And when it comes to, I think about this a lot with myself being a tech CEO who's a woman. You are, as I mentioned, one of very few Fortune 500 CMOs who are Hispanic. What do you think is the reason? And I don't mean to touch on a sensitive subject, but I'm sure a lot of people are curious. What do you think is the reason we don't see more Hispanic C-level executives at large public companies in the U.S.?
I think there's several reasons, Liz. I don't think that there's one reason, right? I mean, there's the old adage of you've got to see it to be it. And so the more of us that there are out there, the more that folks will realize, oh, wow, I can reach that level. I think there's also a need to really make a concerted effort. Like I said, one of the things that makes IBM special is not a day goes by where we don't talk about diversity and inclusion. It's something that we actually have to work at and make sure that we are driving. And not all companies are doing that. And that's going to be required. So while I'm very self-aware of how unique my position is, I also recognize that it comes with a huge responsibility to pay it forward and lift others up. And I've been really, really fortunate to have had many people who have lifted me up along the way as well.
That's awesome. Okay, I have just 2 or 3 more questions. We are seeing so many Q&A from the audience, so thank you all so much for sending them in. And please keep sending them in. Just a reminder to clarify if you're comfortable putting your video on when you ask the question. But okay, 2 or 3 more questions for you. I really want to dive in on IBM for a minute. So when it comes to your role, what are you really most excited about getting your hands on at IBM? Is there a specific product or, projects that you have in mind that you're really excited about?
I mean, this is the most iconic brand in tech. We're not just a tech company, we're the founders of the whole industry. And since I've arrived in February, I keep uncovering all these amazing gems of the company that the world does not even know. So what I'm so excited about is going out to the market in a very, very big and bold way, telling people what IBM is all about, what we represent in the world, and what we do and who we do it for. And that's a piece of work that we've kicked off, and we will be taking that out into the market early next year. So I'm super, super excited about that and shepherding this company to this new era of growth.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so we have too many questions for me to keep going. So I'll ask my final one, which I think is a really fun one. I stalked you a little bit online, not in a creepy way, just, go through your LinkedIn and all of that. And I couldn't help but notice that you took a year off to travel around the world. And I think it's safe to speak on behalf of a lot of attendees that that's awesome. I just did 7 months on the road while working at WayUp, but it was so much fun, but it was only across the US, which it's a great country and I loved it, but going across the world and taking a year off sounds like heaven. And so tell us more about that. Like what inspired you to do that? And I'd love any favorite stories before we dive into audience questions.
Sure. Well, for starters, I had just gone through the hardest 2.5 years of my career. I was commuting to and from San Antonio every single day from Austin, which was about 3 hours round trip on a good day. I was feeling disconnected from my husband and my children. And we had just had an exit. We'd sold the company to Apollo and I had just vested. And I had a decision to make. I could either take the money and run or re-up with Apollo. And I had worked since I was 13 years old. So I turned to my husband. I was exhausted. I felt disconnected. And I turned to my husband and said, I think I need to quit my job. And he said, I would live anywhere with you. I support you. And so I quit my job. And then 30 days later, I came back and I said, I think we need to do something big with this moment. Let's unenroll the kids and travel. And so we did that, and we did it device free. So we actually unhooked ourselves from technology. The kids were 10 and 13. They turned 11 and 14 on that trip. And I basically stole a year of retirement to reconnect with them. But the moral of this story is as grand of a gesture as that was, and as a huge gift as it was to our family, you don't have to do such a big gesture to actually get that same level of connection. And, just throwing your phone in the drawer for a weekend, doing a digital detox can be equally as powerful. So, it's something that I really strongly recommend that everybody try to do a digital detox at least once a year and really be intentional about the time off that they take to recharge.
That is unbelievable. And to go from digital detox to now the founder of the technology industry, it's pretty, yeah, that's amazing. Awesome. All right. Well, we are going to go to audience questions. That was a way better answer than I ever could have expected. So that was great. Brandon, I would love your help in making Angelina Boquet a presenter and bringing her on video. And while you're bringing her on video, I'll just introduce her. So Angelina, and you go by Landerstein. She attends Borough of Manhattan Community College. Marketing professor actually works for IBM named Jim Walsh. So that's very cool. And she's going to ask her question over video. So Angelina, if you turn on your video and unmute yourself, we can see and hear you.
Hi. Oh my gosh. I didn't realize I would get picked.
Hi.
Hi. So my question for you is, a little backstory, sorry. I left my job. I was a teacher for 5 years and I got really into marketing. I went back to school for it. And I'm in that entry phase. And it's a very awkward phase where you know that you have what it takes, you know what you want to do, but how to translate that to the job market, to recruiters, it's very hard. So my question for you is, how do you deal with the no's and the closed doors, like the feelings that go with that, like fear and doubt and maybe rejection over your career?
Yeah. First of all, congratulations. That's a bold move. And I can tell your enthusiasm and energy for it. And as I mentioned, I was actually rejected from Dell when I first applied. And I just kind of waited for my next opportunity. So rejection is part of the game of putting yourself out there, and it's bound to happen. And during my year off, I was actively looking for a job, and I certainly had moments of rejection. And then I had high highs and low lows throughout that process. I think what's more important than anything else is being really clear on your personal and professional values. What's important to you as a person, professionally and personally, so that you can articulate that in the right way to land the right job. And to really get clarity of what your story is, what makes you uniquely you. And your background as a teacher is super relevant. That is part of your story. So making sure that you're weaving a story about who you are. And then the last part that I would say that's really important to understand and appreciate is that marketing is probably one of the fastest evolving roles and functions in the world, especially right now. And especially having gone through what we just went through with the digital transformation of the last 18 months. So never before has fresh knowledge coming right out of school been so important. So this is an industry where we really value the latest and greatest information. And so your fresh knowledge is actually a huge asset to organizations. So I would just remind you of that.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Angelina. All right, Brandon, if we could swap out Angelina and add in Carly Ann LeBoy, she's going to be up next. And she is a student at the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez, currently CI intern at Ingredion, awesome company. And so I will let her join and ask her question. Hi, Carly Ann, you're welcome to unmute yourself and turn your video on.
Hi, I'm Carly Ann. I'm currently a chemical engineering major at the University of Puerto Rico at Mayagüez. And this is my first experience. I am the CI intern in Ingredion at Westchester. And it's my first time like having the experience to work in the corporate world. So as a young woman, Latin, sometimes you have struggles working in corporate. So what will be your advice for me in this case?
Do you mind me asking what those struggles are?
I mean, sometimes it's the language. Sometimes it's the struggle. Like, I don't know if, I know that I have what they're asking for, but sometimes you are like doubting yourself, I would say.
Yeah, that voice inside of the head can be a real killer. So here's what I would say is there's nothing more powerful and authentic than to be vulnerable and to ask questions when you don't know or don't understand something, and or when you're struggling. The other thing that I would say is know that you have so much to offer and bring to the table. So I'll tell you a story. I started my career in the Dell Latin American division, and I started every morning with my boss kissing me good morning, us having breakfast, and I ended every day with me kissing my peers goodbye. And during the middle of the day, there was food everywhere and music, and it was wild, and it did not feel like corporate America at all. It felt like Latin America. And then I moved over to the US side, which was just across the parking lot. And what was shocking to me is suddenly my boss sitting in the cube next to me was emailing me, wouldn't even get up out of his cube to look at me. And my own team, which was just one row over, did the same exact thing. And I thought, oh my God, I don't think I'm going to make it in corporate America. There's no way, I'm dying. I felt no sense of connection to anyone, and I was super lonely. But then something occurred to me. I didn't have to accept their culture as my own. I could bring my culture to them. So that next morning I brought tacos for breakfast, and I started to hand them out. And when people started to have sales wins, I started hugging them, which was very unconventional. And I started to ask about people's children. And by the time I left that team 2 years later, 2 people got married. Everybody was going to each other's children's sporting events. People were cooking for each other. That team is still friends to this day, almost 15 years later. So I say all of this to let you know, Carly Ann, you can bring your culture to the groups that you're a part of. So don't shy away from that. Don't feel like you have to adapt to them. Let them adapt to you.
Thanks.
Fantastic question. Thank you so much, Carly Ann. I just got the goosebumps everywhere, Carla. That was great. Awesome. All right, Brandon, would love to swap in Sarah Kreisman, and I will introduce her. Sarah is an incoming second year at The Ohio State University. She's a marketing strategy and analytics intern at Urban Blooms, but also an IBM Accelerate Seller Track participant. And she said, this is a cool plug. Her dad used to actually work with you at National Instruments in Austin, and her mom went to UT Austin. So there you go. So lots of connections over there. But Sarah, I'll let you take it away.
All right. Hi there. I'm at work right now, so if it's loud in the background, I am so very sorry.
Okay.
My quick question for you is, how do you balance the opinions of executives and your board of directors when you are branding a company or rebranding a company like you did with NI?
Oh my gosh, that is such a sophisticated and hard question. And I don't know that I would have even thought to ask it my first couple of rebrands, and I screwed up because I didn't. So that is like such a sophisticated question. So when I rebranded NI, it actually was not a marketing effort. It was a cross-functional effort. So I built a team of folks from different levels, different functions, which was inclusive of our board chair and was inclusive of our outgoing CEO, Alec, and inclusive of our incoming CEO, Eric. And so we brought them along in the process. and they were part of the work. Now, that being said, I would be lying to you if I didn't say that there were days where I thought it wasn't going to happen. And people express fear in different ways, and resistance in different ways. And when that fear and resistance shows up, it doesn't matter if it's a board member or an executive or a team member in the organization, you have to lean into that and really understand what's going on with them. And I think a lot of times people see resistance or friction as an obstacle. It's actually an opportunity. It's an opportunity to figure out what it is that's going on. Because if you can unlock that person, you're probably unlocking something that's going to impact a much broader set of people, if you understand what's going on with them. So it was not easy. It definitely had its tough moments, but I'm exceptionally proud of the work we did at NI, and I couldn't have done it without the support of our board and our amazing team there.
Sure. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Sarah, who's your dad?
Scott Chrisman. He now works at ASML, but he was the director of global supply chain.
Oh yeah, of course. Well, please tell him I said hi.
I will.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Small world. Thanks so much, Sarah. Awesome. All right. Now we are going to loop in Lauren Lewis. And while she's joining, I'll introduce Lauren. She graduated from Cameron University in 2016 with her Bachelor's of Science in Agriculture and a concentration in animal science and minors in chemistry and business. Oh my goodness, what has she not done? And now she's attending American Public University, obtaining her MBA. And she is a management trainee with Fulton Bank. So Lauren, feel free to unmute yourself and go for it with your question. It's a great question. Okay, I'll ask her question for her. It's a great one. And so she's an MBA and she's a management trainee with Fulton Bank. And so she's looking to advance into a senior management position in the future within Fulton Bank, as I'm sure everyone is looking to grow in their careers. So what advice would you give to anyone wanting to advance into an executive or senior leadership role within their company?
First of all, congratulations on being ambitious and going for it and making your intentions known. And I think it starts with being really clear on what your intentions are and what you aspire to be. I think the next thing is, once you've made those intentions known, asking people that you admire and respect what skills you need to solve for to get there. And they vary by company, but understanding what skills and attributes they value will help you develop a map of the key experiences that you can obtain along the way. And so I think really understanding that. I think the next thing is, don't try to play chess with your career. It doesn't work. And actually do the thing that you enjoy. Do the thing that gets you bounding out of bed in the morning. Because if you tackle that and you're really enjoying your work, then and you're really expressing joy to those around you, then your career will naturally scale from there. When people are happy and enjoying themselves and having fun, are usually the opportunities where you're in the most flow and when people get noticed. So for me, it's more about enjoying what you're doing, loving who you're working with, than actually figuring out what the next role is, if that makes sense.
Before we go back to audience questions, I have a question for you on that. There's been a lot of talk recently around this whole concept. I think Mark Andreessen to the venture capital world brought it up, and Scott Galloway from, he's in the marketing and kind of industry analyst world, brought it up of follow not what you're most passionate about in your career, but what you're best at, and focus on getting better at it as opposed to just what you're most passionate about. And a lot of people responded to that and said, I disagree. Where do you, I know this is a hard question, but where do you kind of lie in that argument of, do you follow what you're passionate about or what you're good at to become great?
I give a similar piece of advice, which is know what you're good at and make sure that you communicate what you're good at, which maps to what you also like doing. And I'll say why. Sometimes we're good at things that we don't enjoy. So if you say, let's say that you are a massive problem solver, it's just a great skill that you have. So you lead with it and you say, I'm an amazing problem solver, but deep down you hate solving problems. Then you're not going to enjoy that. So I think be really crystal clear on what it is that you're good at, that you enjoy, and then hone that. The other side to that coin, which is really important, is oftentimes people will focus on the thing that they're not good at and try to fix it. And I think that there's much more lift and continuing to hone the things that you're good at and just kind of brush aside the things that you're not good at, which is probably controversial advice, but we all have things that we're not great at.
And I guess if you're in your type of role, you can hire people who are exceptional at that and lean on them for that.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Cool. All right. This next question is from Caitlin Schmidt. She asked to stay off video because I think there's some noise in her background. So I'm going to ask it on her behalf. She's interning at Pfizer in New York City this summer. And her question is, in a recent interview, you discussed how the pandemic has impacted our use of content and customer expectations for more sophisticated experiences on platforms like TikTok. Can you discuss how IBM will engage with clients on such platforms? Thank you. Thanks, Caitlin.
Yeah. If we think about the last 18 months and how it's impacted the way in which we consume content and our expectations of the sophistication of that content, I mean, we all escaped to streaming television. We all binge watched our favorite series. I really started to think about that as a marketer and think, okay, how can we really educate people with respect to what IBM does? Because it's so materially impactful in the world. So how do we educate people on concepts like cloud and AI and what that means to their work and how those technologies can actually improve and enhance the way in which we work and live? And I started thinking of things like Chef's Table and Masterclass and Khan Academy and thinking, okay, we all learn differently. What if we could produce really beautiful, technically rich, substantive content that would not only inspire customers and future customers, but would actually educate them. They'd actually get something out of it. So in the future, what you're going to see from IBM is much richer, more inspiring technical substance in our content. And I really envision bringing that to life on IBM.com, other channels too. So we definitely will show up in YouTube and TikTok and others. And we're on Instagram today and LinkedIn and so on. But for me, it's less about the channel. While that's very important, it's about the substance of the content and what it is that we're trying to convey. And that's something that you will see a significant shift in. In fact, I made my first hire that we'll be announcing next week. And that person will come run our brand and content engine and product marketing engine, which we are putting under one roof, and we will build a production house to make that possible. So the wheels are already turning to get that in motion. And I expect that you'll start to see that in market next year.
That's awesome. I remember when hearing, you see all these TV commercials for 5G and everyone seems to have the first 5G, and then Verizon put out a really cool podcast on the New York Times, I think it was, all about, or through the New York Times, all about what 5G actually is and technicalities. And just, I hate to say dumbing it down, but I'm not very technical with 5G. So it really simplified it for me. And so hearing that you are going to do that for a lot of the technology behind IBM, given how complex it is, that sounds awesome. So very cool. All right. Next up, if we could bring on Aliyah Koladoy. Sorry, there's so many names. Aliyah Koladoy, and I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your last name, while she's joining. She is a recent graduate, class of 2021, congratulations, from Georgia State University with a degree in marketing, currently interning, a creative intern at Imagine Media Consulting. And so go for it with your question. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Hi.
Hi.
So basically, I am currently, like she said, a creative intern at Imagine Media Consulting. And at my previous internship, I was doing social media management. And now I'm trying to go into diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also brand strategy. But I'm not really sure how to get in there. So I've reached out to a couple of people on LinkedIn to kind of talk about their experience. These are people that are much higher up in the diversity, equity, and inclusion process. And so I guess my question is, how do I gain meaningful connections while trying to gain experience as well, and not making it seem like I'm just talking to people because I want a job?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think it's so awesome that you're reaching out to people directly, regardless of their level. And I think that that's something that's really important. I think also recognizing that you have something to offer them just as much as they have something to offer you. So when seeking connection, that's what I'm hearing in your words, is that you're looking for more than just a job. You're looking for connection to someone so that you can actually learn and understand how to employ this. And I think when seeking connection, really understanding what challenges they face, what they're trying to achieve, what the obstacles are, will help you understand where you can add value and where you can make an impact. I do think the area in which you're starting to focus on and starting to the path that you're starting to go down is very, very relevant. So I would encourage you to continue down this path. And I think you're right to reach out to DEI officers and to CMOs and to see what sort of traction you get. And then the last one I would say is experiment. You've got a social platform yourself. So experiment with some of the things that you would like to do and put them on your own social platform and see how it goes. And use that as an opportunity to learn and also to gain exposure.
Thank you so much. I actually never thought of like actually using my own platforms, but that's very helpful. Thank you.
That's a great place to start. I mean, if you think about this day and age, what's happening is things like TikTok and YouTube and even Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, they're democratizing everything. Yeah. So, that is a platform for you to begin to build and work off of.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Aaliyah. And before we go to the next question, Carla, I'm curious, how often when you're thinking about hiring someone in marketing, do you actually say, I'm going to look at your social media before I interview you or maybe even hire you, since that is, to your point, a big part of their marketing profile?
I mean, it's the first place I go. I Google folks. I look at as much information as I can get on LinkedIn and outside of LinkedIn. I'm also really big on references. I had a boss teach me about 10 years ago that there's power in references. And in fact, she did something really powerful. She wouldn't hold interviews. She would just do references, which I thought was like really wild. And she always built amazing teams. So I also look at references and talk to people who have either worked with or know the individuals that I'm talking to.
Awesome. So to everyone watching, clean up your social media if you're planning for applying, especially in a marketing role, but probably just in general. Fantastic. All right, now we're going to welcome on stage. And Carla, let us know if you need a breath. You're like going back to back. This is amazing. You're answering a lot of questions, so thank you. All right, next up, we're going to welcome on stage Khalid Sajor. They are a recent graduate in marketing from York College, located in New York, and recently searching for internship opportunities. And so they want to ask about the difference of applying for big companies versus small, but I will let you ask your question. So Khalid, if you are able to join.
Hello, Carla Piñeyro. I would like to thank you guys for taking the time today to answer our questions and for the opportunities you provide for us. My name is Carla Piñeyro. I'm a marketing student from York College. I recently graduated. I've been working in the same company for a long time since high school, and they never want me to leave. And I'm not sure if not having a lot of different companies in my resume is that a huge problem. And me applying for internships becomes a problem where I'm asking myself, is it important to apply to a small company when starting, or is it better for huge corporations?
Yeah. Well, first of all, Khalid, congratulations on graduating. And I don't necessarily perceive it as a problem if you've stayed at a company for a long time or not. I think what's more important is it's similar to the conversation I was having earlier, which is, what are your values? What's important to you? What's going to excite you every day? What sort of people do you want to be around? My values are, I care about who I work with and for more than the actual work itself. I want a platform for doing good in the world. I want to leave the world a better place, and I see my job and my work as a platform for that. I want a seat at the table, so I want to be part of the team that makes the strategic decisions. I don't do well if I'm on the other side of the closed door. And I want to make a big impact. So those are my values. So being clear on your values, I think, is important. I think also exploring, giving yourself permission to explore, to see what it feels like in small environments and big environments. I've worked in both. I've enjoyed aspects of both. And it's really one of personal preference. And I think along those two is, do you want to be in a fast growth environment, or do you want to be in a more stable environment? These are all different things to consider and keep in mind. And the only way to figure that out is to actually try. And what I would also say is that it's recoverable. So if you end up going to a company and you don't like it, it's recoverable. You can always change. So, and sometimes fear holds us back from the exploration. But if your company is trying to retain you and doesn't want you to leave, then that's an indication to me that you're a really good employee and that you're not going to have a hard time finding employment.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Khalib. And I will say, to your point, one thing we see at WayUp is that the larger the company, the more robust of a training program they often have for new employees, whereas startups don't really have a whole team just to run training. And so you're right about, the structure and stability differences. Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Awesome. We'll bring on Kyla Williams now. And while she's joining, I will introduce Kyla. Kyla is a graduate student pursuing master's in marketing at the Kogod School of Business at American University. Kyla studied Spanish since kindergarten and had the opportunity to take it abroad to do business school in Chile and in Spain to further their education and immerse themselves into cultures. Wow, you are amazing. So Kyla, take it away with your question.
Thank you. Hola, Kyla.
Hola, ¿qué tal?
Bien, gracias.
Happy to be here. And I was so happy when I saw the email about this panel because CMO marketing was something that I was very interested in. And then also seeing that Piñeyro was your last name, well, one of your last names, I was like, this is something I feel like I wanted to ask my question, being that I am a bilingual student. So it was very interesting to hear how you got brought up through the bar conversation, speaking Spanish, and that's something that is an amazing opportunity, though it has not yet happened to me. So I was wondering, as a bilingual student, how do you go about looking for positions, or what positions do you think that I should look for when I'm looking to leverage my ability to speak Spanish, my strong knowledge in marketing, and also my international experience, like to use in a business setting, also specifically marketing? Like, what positions do you recommend I start looking for in terms of like internships?
Yeah. So did I hear correctly that you actually spent time in Chile and in South America as well? So that's such a huge asset. I mean, right there, that puts you a step ahead. And I always say that Spanish was the biggest gift. Second to moving to this country, Spanish was the biggest gift that my parents gave to me and my sister. There's no way I would have had the career that I had without it. And that really started within Dell's Latin American division. So I would look for organizations that are looking to either grow or build businesses, or who have established presence in Latin America, because your Spanish speaking skills could definitely be an asset that you could take advantage of to get an entry point. So right there, right off the bat, the fact that you have functional knowledge of marketing and then the combination of Spanish, and leading with that, if that's something that you enjoy, if you think that you want to work in Spanish, really leading with that to see what reveals itself. But Latin America is a huge emerging market. Depending on which countries you want to work with, I would seek those things out on Indeed, on LinkedIn, to see what you're seeing and what countries and what companies have momentum in the Latin American countries.
Okay. And then one more question. Are you using Spanish often in your role?
I'm starting to. I'm not using it as much as I once did. I used to work in Spanish all day long, 100%. But I interact with people within the organization in Spanish. So it's more in an informal setting. So if there's somebody that's a Spanish speaker and prefers to speak in Spanish, then we speak in Spanish when we're having a one-on-one. I haven't had the opportunity yet to engage with customers in Spanish since I joined IBM in February, but I'm starting to use it more and more.
Okay. ¿Y de qué país vienes? What country are you from?
Uruguay, de Montevideo.
Oh, cool. So cool. Thank you so much for answering the question.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Just know that's a huge advantage and asset that you have. Don't shy away from it.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kyla. Great. All right, we only have about 5 minutes left. So thank you all for such great questions. But next up, we're going to bring on Neha Narayan. Neha is an incoming senior, so rising senior at Indiana University, studying marketing, currently interning at Lenovo in trade marketing. So Neha, please join us and turn your video on. Excited for your question.
Hi, thanks so much for doing this. My question is actually, what's like kind of the worst advice you've ever received in your career from like a coworker or a peer? And how did you kind of take that really bad advice that kind of knocked you down and like kind of bring you up?
Okay, that is such a good question. I will tell you, advice and feedback, while being gifts, the benefit of it is that you can pick and choose what you actually listen to. And to your point, sometimes you have to be careful. And I've gotten lots of bad advice and feedback over the years. And I think probably the worst was I was given the feedback that I was too ambitious and that I needed to tone it down. And that weekend, I was given that feedback on a Friday. And that weekend, I beat myself up over it. I thought, oh my gosh, what is it about myself that operates from a place of blind ambition? Am I steamrolling over people? Like, I really just felt awful about it. And I actually went so far as to call a few of my peers and ask them if they felt the same way. And I called 2 male peers, both of which I knew would be direct with me. They were kind of my tell you how it is friends. And one of them said, I'm the most ambitious person I know, and no one has ever told me that. And the other one said, Carla, no one would have ever said that to you if you were a dude. And so that next Monday, I came back into the office, and my boss said, so what did you think of the feedback? And have you thought about it? And I said, yeah, I've thought about it. And my boss said, so, what are you going to do? And I said, well, God forbid anybody ever tell your daughter she's too ambitious. And I quit. And I left that company. And it was the hardest thing I ever did. And it was the best thing I ever did for my career.
Wow. I'm like speechless that someone gave that advice to you, or that feedback to you, but so happy that you didn't have that, imposter syndrome that many of us sometimes face of just listening and thinking in. That's amazing. Awesome. Well, great question, Neha. Thank you so much. The next question is from someone named Bruna, who is not on video. So I'll ask on their behalf. This is a little bit less around career and more just around marketing. It's a great question. We're entering a world where marketing is becoming automated, which will change everyday marketers' jobs. How do you think marketers can continue to add value in the world of automation?
Such a great question. We cannot ever forget as marketers that our number one responsibility is to create connection with our customers and our brand. And that requires human beings. And in a world of technology and automation and data, that's really easy to forget. But that is the number one goal of marketers. So I think that's of paramount importance. Understanding that human understanding, the ability to form human connection, is of paramount importance, and that should inform the way in which we think about our roles. Automation is a tool, but if we're not careful, we can let it lead the way, and that should not be the case.
Awesome. All right, we only have time for one last question. So I am going to ask Sarah Whitman's question. There's been a lot of questions around, do I start at a big or small company? So I think Sarah's question kind of really does a good job of bringing them all together. So Sarah is in a chaotic environment right now because she's at work or she's at her internship. So I will ask on her behalf. She's a rising junior at the University of Michigan, studying user experience design at the School of Information and a minor in the School of Art and Design, currently a creative intern at Emerge Consulting. And her question for you is, how do you think your career path was affected or advantaged by being able to start out at such a large organization like Dell versus many others who start out at smaller or local organizations?
So I actually started at small organizations. If you think about, my first experience was really in the bar business. So I was working for owners. And I was usually working directly for an owner. And so the interesting part of that was I went from a place where if I made a decision, it had a massive impact on the organization. And I could see it immediately, and I could see the benefits of that immediately, or the downside of that immediately. And I was getting instant feedback, to suddenly I was at Dell, which when I left had close to 100,000 employees. Now, something really interesting happened when I was at Dell, which was when I got to Dell, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm not capped by the owner anymore. I can grow. The world is my oyster. I can go sideways. I can go explore all these different functions. I can go up. I can try all these different things on for size to see what I like. So for me, it was super inspiring to go from a small environment to a large environment. But interestingly enough, I still sought out the small environments within the large environment. And I've always kind of done that. So at UT, I studied architecture at the University of Texas. I had 40 people in my freshman class, but yet, there are 55,000 students at the University of Texas. At Dell, I worked in the Latin American division is where I started, which was a smaller part of Dell. So I kind of sought out these smaller environments within the larger company because I liked the feel of that. And I got a reputation for being an entrepreneur. So somebody who starts businesses within businesses. So I don't know that it's so much about small environment, big environment, because you can actually figure that out. If you like a small environment, you can actually even find that in a large company. I think it's more about what's the sort of culture that you want to be a part of? What's the sort of opportunity that you want to have? And Liz, you called something out as well, which I think is really important. How much structure do you want and need? Are you the sort of person that likes it when it's a little bit crazy and you're wearing lots of different hats? Or do you need something that is a little bit more defined? Understanding those things will help guide you in terms of the type of company that you join. But I think it's more about culture and environment than small versus large.
Awesome. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have. I know we have dozens more questions that we haven't been able to answer, and I'm so sorry to everyone who's asked these fantastic questions that we didn't get to. But Carla, you are incredible. Thank you so much. If people do want to follow you on social media, is there like a Twitter handle or LinkedIn or something that you people can kind of hear what you're thinking?
Yeah, I'm at Piñeyro on Twitter, Pineyro. I'm also on LinkedIn. I post on LinkedIn quite a bit. I'm on Instagram, and I'm not so much on Facebook these days. But I think Twitter and LinkedIn are probably the easiest.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. One of the attendees just wrote, "You are the best," and I would agree. You are amazing. So thank you so much for doing this. It was such great advice. To anyone who's watching this and you maybe were interested in sharing this with your friends, we recorded this, so we'll be posting it to YouTube, and you are welcome to share this with your friends. So thank you so much, Carla. I really appreciate it. And to everyone else on, have a great day and enjoy the rest of your week. Take care. Thank you, Carla.
Those that ask questions, such an impressive crew. Thanks, Liz, for having me. Bye.
Bye, everyone.